I think a lot of the people who will listen to this, a lot of people who are my audience, your audience, uh, they're pretty hip to some of the metaphysical basics. And a lot of times we hear, especially in the discussion of the law of attraction, that we don't want to think about the things that we don't want more of. We don't want to emphasize things that we don't want more of, right? But I think it's interesting that you mentioned the 12 steps, because that first step is actually the acknowledgement and recognition of the reality of the problem. In one of your books, A Course in Weight Loss, um, one of the first exercises you have the reader do is stand naked in front of a mirror, and it's bearing witness to the wreckage. And I think that that's what comes to mind when I am reading the news, when I'm witnessing what's going on. I'm not doing it because I'm trying to stay addicted to the intensity of it. It's not that. I'm not doing it for any reason other than really remaining informed, and therefore allowing that information to allow me to make wise and intelligent moves next. You can't surgically remove a tumor that you don't fully see, that you don't see the extent of. So this idea of being willing, even though, yes, we're spiritual people, yes, there's this component of the law of attraction and attracting good things and manifesting something larger and something better and something beautiful, but not without fully witnessing and recognizing that the house is burning down. One quote that I love, I often share from you: "It's not negative to yell fire if the house is indeed on fire."
Well, this idea that you don't look at something because it's negative, and so if you look at it, it might expand, is such a misapplication of spiritual principle. Some things are made more negative because you don't look at them. Can
Yes,
you imagine going to your doctor and the doctor says, well, you have stage 1 cancer, but let's not look at it. Let's not focus on it because it might grow. No, you better focus on it so that it might not grow. That's like saying
right,
a little abuse in a marriage doesn't matter, but it's just a little bit. Let's not focus on it. And that's,
right.
I love how in the Course in Miracles it says, I cannot take from you what you will not give to me. You have to bring the darkness to the light. The Course says you can't bring the light to the darkness. And that's where you get a lot of this faux spirituality. Nothing's wrong, nothing's wrong. When in fact, we have to bring the darkness to the light. That's also
Hmm.
the difference between positive denial and negative denial. When you say, I'm not going to look at something because it's just it's toxic, so let's not look at it and give it attention. That's negative denial. That's not transcendence. The doctor
Mm-hmm.
doesn't turn away from the wound. The doctor doesn't say, "Ugh, that looks icky. Your elbow, ugh, all that blood. Let's look at your knee instead." I mean, we're
Hmm.
here to be the healers. You can't heal the wound you don't look at, much as you were just saying. Now, there is also the use of positive denial. And that's that you look straight at it and you deny its power over you. That's when enough of us look at rising authoritarianism, systemic racism, all the various things we have to worry about right now, look them straight in the eye and say, I deny your power. I deny you the ability to go 1 foot forward because we're here and we won't stand for it.
Hmm.
That is power.
Right. I love that. And another thing that you have said is you want to find your voice, you want to find your power, discover your power, use it on behalf of someone else. Um,
Exactly.
Something that, being raised Christian, uh, there was something that also resonated that you said. You said, Jesus didn't come to earth to tell us to love ourselves. Jesus
Enough
came,
with this. Love yourself. Love yourself. Can you imagine? Can you? Jesus did that exactly. Love each other. Just love
right,
yourself. Love yourself. Love yourself.
right.
You can't love yourself if you don't love others because, let me go,
Hmm.
the siren. You can't essentially love yourself without loving others because yourself is everyone. That's where you find yourself through your
Hmm.
realization that there is no separation between you and others.
Hmm. And
Now,
so,
some people yell and call that codependency. That's not codependency, that's enlightenment.
so there's something, I want to take this sort of like metaphysical for 1 second. And there's
We've pretty much been taking a metaphysical since the beginning of the podcast, but that's fine with me.
Yeah. So the idea, I mean, I think that the audience that will hear this, the people who are within the sound of my voice now, and whenever they hear this, they're metaphysical practitioners to one extent or another. And the law we hear about, the highest metaphysical law, so to speak, is the law that all is one, that all is interconnected, that when we're looking into the eyes of each other, we're looking into a mirror. There's this great teaching in the doctrine of avatars and the continuity of revelation that at points throughout human history, at crucial crisis points, that there are people who incarnate like Christ, like Buddha, these divine children of God who manifest and embody within themselves these higher principles to sort of, to use your words, embody that mutation, that spiritual mutation necessary. The one great agreement that so many of the world traditions have is this notion of the coming one. For the Jewish tradition, it's the arrival of the Messiah. For Christians, it's the return of the Christ. For Buddhists, it's the incarnation of the final Buddha, Maitreya. Hinduism, it's the Kalki avatar. We could go on. And from a metaphysical perspective, this law of oneness, it means something really interesting, especially as it's said in A Course in Miracles. He will return when he's witnessed. So when
That's
we,
what the Course in Yeah, that's what the Course in Miracles says. When he returns, and then it puts in parentheses, when he shall be perceived again.
there
He
we go.
never left. The Christ was created by God. The Course in Miracles says, whatever God creates cannot be uncreated. The Christ is in all of us. It is unseen, much as you just said, it is not borne witness to. And
Hmm.
it is a collective experience. It is the realization on the part of all of us, or certainly enough of us, that, as you said, when we look into the eyes of the other, we are
Hmm.
looking into a mirror.
And as Jesus himself said biblically, whatever you've done unto the least of these, my brethren, you have done it unto me. So that is, I think, one of the most crucial things that comes into play when we start thinking about politics. I ran for office here in Venice, California. One of the biggest issues we had here was the unhoused, the issue of the unhoused. So many people uh, were making a really big deal about how, we pay high rent here. Why do they get to live here for free? Um, uh, wanting to deny them services, and all different kinds of controversy around the issue of homelessness. And so that became the primary focus of my campaign. And the idea that came through was love thy neighborhood. Love all of these people, love the whole neighborhood. What if you can't love the whole world? What if we try to just love the whole neighborhood and every person here, every living being here? And I found that a lot of people who, this is no surprise to anyone, but a lot of people who identify as religious or spiritual had a very hard time wanting to be of service to these people who they perceive as drug addicts or mentally ill or criminals, particularly within the encampments, the unhoused population.
What was your policy platform regarding the homeless population in Venice? What were you
Proactive.
suggesting?
We were suggesting, and we were also enacting, proactive wraparound services. These are individuals, and so often we try to do large sweeping generalizations, but they needed to be addressed on an individual basis. So we created a task force, a team of people who served as volunteer intermediaries between all of the different services that already were available. We developed relationships. We called the program Coffee with Our Neighbors, and we brought coffee and flowers to the boardwalk. We still do it every Sunday. Coffee and flowers to the encampments. We get to know them. We get to know their names. We let them know that there are places where they can use the internet, places where they can apply for housing, places where they can get free meals, medical care, vaccines, stimulus checks, all different kinds of things, facilitating introductions, making it more of an intimate connection. So much of the outreach to the unhoused population is through law enforcement, and I don't know if people realize this or not. so often, not only is law enforcement outreach violent, uncomfortable, scary, traumatizing, it's also often done in the middle of the night. So, in the middle of the night, 3, 4 in the morning, they would go to these tents along the beach with guns, sometimes big assault rifles, not just the guns on their waist, but assault rifles, bulletproof vests, sometimes even in like the military coloring and everything, in the middle of the night, going into these tents, encampments, and things like that. And so, what we were trying to do was play nice with the law enforcement, have people. We established an oversight committee where we were actually having people go with the law enforcement officers on the outreach and facilitating as much of the outreach as possible. We were able to house almost 100 people.
Let me ask you a question, and all of that sounds really good. I saw a picture of police with long guns approaching a homeless encampment. Where are the police telling them to go in those cases?
That's the craziest thing. They're just saying it's kind of like the bar at closing time. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. It's the quintessential kicking the can down the road. That's how they all landed in Venice, because Santa Monica certainly won't allow it. Malibu certainly won't allow it. Manhattan Beach certainly won't allow it. So where do they end up? They end up here in Venice. That's how they got here, was the can getting kicked down the road. So they handed out a brochure that had a list of all the different services that you could call. So many of these people don't even have working phones. So it's essentially garbage. Giving them a brochure, telling them they have to pack up and leave, and the sanitation department coming in and throwing away all of their belongings. So
I ho-
they didn't have anywhere for them to go.
So when you said that you feel that your task force has helped about 100 people, how many more are there?
Thousands.
And what do the leaders of the city, what do the city leaders, what does the person who beat you in your campaign say they're going to do?
Well, the person who beat me in the campaign has contacted me a number of times for advice on this particular issue.
Since he
So
won?
since he won, so I'm consulting in this particular area. He's very conservative. He's considered the conservative person um, who won, even though we weren't running on party platforms. He also located a plot of land nearby that's city owned property where he is recommending that encampments be relocated to, so that there's a place for them to go to. And in some ways that could be effective. In other ways, it's really not effective, because so many of these people rely on the kindness of strangers. And if we're moving them to what amounts to a parking lot that's connected to LAX, they're not going to be able to receive the help from the strangers that they really need. Um, we do have someone, City Council member Mike Bonin, who himself was unhoused and had a crystal meth addiction, overcame it, got clean, is sober, ran for office and won, and is now um, married with children. Has quite a success story, I think, and is very compassionate to the unhoused population, um, and redirecting a number of different. There's different funds for different programs where he's basically running on the platform of the creation of long-term housing um, for people.
Yeah, that's
We
what has to happen. These people have to
exactly,
be given homes.
yeah, they have
Now,
to be given homes.
Garcetti is going off to be, I think, ambassador to India. Who's going
Hmm.
to be running for mayor in Los Angeles?
A number of different people, including Mike Bonin, including
Oh,
the
really?
yes. So a lot of people are very opposed to that idea because they see him as pro homeless, which is of course so silly, because if
God
you
forbid
house
we should
them,
love our neighbor, right?
if you house them, they're no longer homeless. Um,
Excellent point.
so that's the most interesting part to me is, we have so much money allocated for this particular issue, and then meanwhile we've got all these empty buildings. It's like, I grew up, my dad's a land developer, home builder. Um, I'm looking at these buildings and I'm like, we tweak a couple of these buildings, get them up to code, and you got a studio apartment. You got a building full of studio apartments. You don't need to build a 600 million. And then that's the other problem is some of these land developers actually profit. They call it the homeless industrial complex. They profit from these enormous amounts of funds that are allocated for the issue. And there are land developers who want to build these big apartment complexes where it's $1 million a unit for them to build, and each unit is one person. When $1 million, you could help a lot of people for $1 million.
Yeah.
You can help a lot of people in a lot of different ways for $1 million. So the issue is, of course, that people are profiting. Businesses are profiting off of this particular issue all over the place. Um, so I think it does amount to the reality that enough people do have to have not just an emotional, heart-centered awakening, but a simultaneous intellectual awakening. There are a lot of people with their hearts in the right place who I think are disconnected from the intellect, and I
Mm.
think that if we have a
And vice
simultaneous,
versa.
and vice versa, absolutely, I think it's the unifying those two forces, essentially symbolized, I think, from the Buddha and Christ, the avatar of light, the enlightenment, wisdom, the mind, and Christ, the God of love, the God of mercy, and the idea of like merging those two notions and those ideas together and saying, what's the smart thing to do here, and what's the compassionate thing to do here?
Well, Buddha, I don't know. I think that's more Moses, the law, because
Mm-hmm,
Buddha was infinite compassion. I mean, that is the center of Buddhism is the open heart. So
mm-hmm,
I don't think that, the Buddhism is the law and Jesus is the love. I think that's
mm-hmm.
more, anyway, that's just a conversation about Buddha, but Buddha's whole
Yeah,
notion
yeah.
was infinite compassion. Right.
Yeah, I think I was drawing that directly
Yeah.
from the Secret Doctrine theosophical
Mm-hmm.
writings, where they specifically identified that distinction. But I totally
Mm-hmm.
agree. The principle of metta and loving kindness and everything is directly out of Buddhism, and the notion of unity, all beings being one. The way of the Bodhisattva, which is the initiation onto the path of the Bodhisattva, is of course true compassion. So yeah, absolutely, completely agree. Um, but yeah, this idea of both the knowledge and intelligence paired with compassion and the open heart. Um, and so when it comes to here in our neighborhood in Los Angeles, in this city, it's one of the biggest issues. It's been exacerbated dramatically by the pandemic. Um, there are evictions. People are, we hear in the news these ideas of like eviction moratoriums and stuff like that. That's nice. So many of these people are still getting evicted. I don't know. I personally know people, especially through the outreach, who were like, that moratorium didn't apply to me, didn't apply to my building. People lost their jobs, and then shortly thereafter they lost their homes. you know so I do see this need for the spiritual renaissance or the awakening to find its way into politics. And like you said, there's an
Well, it is
incredible
finding its
urgency.
way. It is finding its way in,
Mhm,
for instance, the things that you just said. I mean, how can we talk about being more, compassionate and having more loving kindness, but then ignoring the homeless person down the street? I mean, that's really the whole point here is that
mhm,
a spirituality that tries to take a pass on addressing the suffering of other sentient beings is a faux spirituality. And you
mhm.
get a lot of that over the last few years once capitalism got its hands on it. And it became just another capitalist enterprise in too many cases, where it was about, as you said earlier, making your own dreams come true. That's
Right,
not, Buddha, Muhammad, Moses, Jesus, none of them are just, you can make your dreams come true. I mean, that's like a
right,
TV show. That's not a deep religious or spiritual tradition. That
right.
came from people who were,
Well,
That's not what the spiritual journey is. It does so happen that your dreams do come true, but it's almost like your dreams coming true is the natural consequence of your inhabiting the space of the truth of who you are. The truth of who you are being that expanded love for all beings. Now, when we stand in that space of love for all human beings, make our decisions from that place. It's like yoga, finding the correct position. It's just like you find the correct position in the asanas in yoga, you find the correct position in your mind. Now, when you're doing yoga, it's good for your body. It actually promotes the health of the body because when you practice those positions, it actually stimulates the organs into their right functioning. When
mm-hmm,
we're in the right attitude of love, then all aspects of ourself function in a way that promotes more abundance. It puts us in a place where we are more likely to attract opportunities, personal opportunities, professional opportunities, economic opportunities, psychological and emotional opportunities. There is a universe of perfection, whether you call it the mind of God or not, in which the happiness of all living things is already coded. Just as the acorn is already coded to become the oak tree, the embryo is coded to become the baby. We are, in essence, coded to become the highest embodiment of love. And within that place, that is our highest creativity, that is our highest productivity, and it is our highest probability for attracting everything that is abundant, loving, peaceful, and happy in our experience. The problem we have, and I think if there's any religion that we could lay this on the feet of, it would be Christianity. This
mm-hmm,
notion, this thought form that to serve God is personal sacrifice. You shouldn't be worrying about your own dreams. You should serve God, and that it shouldn't matter that you were willing to ask to sacrifice your personal dreams. What the
mm-hmm,
Course in Miracles and other religions would say is no, when you serve God, that's serving love. That's when all your dreams come true. That there
mm-hmm,
is no conflict
mm-hmm.
between serving God, that serving between serving God and having the quote unquote life of your dreams. That's the
Right.
key to having the life of your dreams.
Hmm.
But
Well, it's interesting because there
that
is that
thought
illusion
is,
at the beginning. At the beginning of it, it's like right there in this moment. If I, especially in this whole vision board reality where everyone's got like a collage board of like all the things they want to have, do, or experience or become, and it's interesting because when we, it seems like it's a sacrifice, like you're saying, like in I think like typical modern Christian perspective, it seems like, well, I'm supposed to sacrifice what I want for God to go serve God. I'm supposed to basically the renunciation moment. um, and so it's trusting. I think you address this in a couple of your books, but especially Law of Divine Compensation. It's trusting that even if I don't get this now, if I'm doing the right thing and I'm in my heart, I get something, I get the same or better.
well, you used the word renunciation. The word sacrifice is different than the word renunciation. Sacrifice is I give up my good.
Hmm.
Renunciation means I forego the lower in order to achieve the higher. So
Absolutely.
it might be that I don't get the temporary goods, but once I know how the universe metaphysically operates, when I quote unquote sacrifice the temporary prize, I really know it's no sacrifice.
Yes.
I actually know that the real sacrifice would be allowing my self will to guide me into thought or behavior that's going to give me only a temporary win, but which is bound to ultimately lead to complete undermining and sabotage of my good because it's not in alignment with the love of the universe.
I love that.
So,
There's something I wanted to read. There's a book called An American Covenant by Lucille Scott, and you're one of five women uh, outlined and covered in this book who have merged to an extent, to varying different extents and in different ways, spirituality and politics. And I want to read just part of what it says about you in this one, because it speaks to exactly what you're addressing now. Marianne helped usher in the mainstreaming of the New Age. Women comprised roughly 75% of this new market, and Marianne was emerging as its Warren Buffett. But unlike other top selling self help authors, Marianne Williamson did not just talk of higher consciousness and personal healing as vehicles to manifesting your dreams like a new Mercedes. She talked of higher consciousness and personal healing as vehicles to defeating the fear based powers that be and transforming the world. So you were known, even from the beginning of your career, uh, to direct the inner healing, the personal healing, and the personal spiritual work to the collective. You were always
Well,
known for that.
when my career began, this BS about make your own dreams come true hadn't even arrived yet.
Mm-hmm.
That whole you can manifest your dreams thing hadn't even arrived yet. Like I said, that's what happened when capitalism got its hooks into this. That didn't even wasn't even there. And very early in my career, remember I started lecturing in 1983 in
Mm-hmm.
Los Angeles, and by the mid 80s, AIDS had burst onto the scene. So in my career, the serious issues of life and death and people who are suffering was front and center from the beginning. Nobody had any time for that ridiculous, absurd stuff about how can I get what I want. So I feel fortunate that that came a little bit later, and I was like, you got to be kidding me. But the
Mm-hmm.
original work, when you look at myself, when you look at who was there, Deepak, James Redfield, Gene Houston, Gary Zukov, even Neil Donald Walsh, but that was the original sort of generation of us that came in with the second wave.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, anytime you have the mainstreaming and the popularization of something, there's some good that comes with that. Don't get
Right.
me wrong.
And also the
But there has
corruption.
also been a shadow side. And so this whole idea that you can make your dreams come true, that in the Course in Miracles is the distinction between magic and miracles.
Right.
So when you were
Mm-hmm.
talking about the vision board and all of that, so magic is when you say you use God as your errand boy.
Mm-hmm.
God, I want this kind of apartment. I want it to be on the beach. I think I want it to be in Santa Monica. And I want to make this, I want this many zeros. I want a job that will bring me between 150 and 200,000 the first year. And I want a partner that looks like, and you get very specific. That's magic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I'm not even saying that it doesn't work to some extent, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not it's not the spiritual mountaintop. So let's not call it the spiritual mountaintop. The
Right.
spiritual mountaintop is not the magical but the miraculous. The miraculous is where you say, God, how can I serve you?
Mm-hmm.
How can I serve you? Love, how can I serve you? Now, this is what's so interesting. When you say, Love, how can I serve you? Love will also say, and while you're doing this, obviously you'll need a great apartment to live in. Right? And obviously it'll be good for you to have somebody with you. And obviously you're going to have to have enough, economic stuff around you so you won't be wasting your time on economic stress. The universe is set up to support you, but first you support the universe, and then the universe will naturally bring to you. And you go, wow, it's good. Much better than I got when I was just trying to determine everything I wanted in the realm of form.
Hmm. And I think it's even scarier when things are so intense. We feel like, let's say you're having financial problems when your bank account is negative and you don't have any prospects and blah blah blah. It's so much more tempting in those moments to lose faith, to lose heart, and to say, okay, I really need to focus on that $2,500 a week job or a month job or whatever it
And
is.
that's, well, don't get me wrong. That's
Right.
good, but it
Hmm.
also includes doing what you know you can do to
Right.
get that job. So
Right.
I'm not, the one thing that my father told me as a child that I don't think I agree with. He used to say, "Never pray for money."
Mm-hmm.
The Course in Miracles says, ask God for whatever you feel you need in the realm of form. So if you say, God, I owe $20,000 in student loans, I don't know what to do about this. There's nothing wrong with saying, Holy Spirit, help me.
Right.
But one of the ways that you are helped is that all of the obstacles to your ability to create wealth and to receive wealth are removed.
Hmm.
So
You know
that's
that.
what the prayer is for, because
Yeah.
the universe is already set up to bring you the $20,000 if you need it. The Course in Miracles says God has an answer to every problem the moment the problem occurs. So the
Hmm.
prayer becomes, I need this money. Dear God, please remove whatever it is in me or in my environment that is blocking that money from coming into my wallet.
Hmm.
So
Right.
whatever my attitudes, maybe I'm not showing up well at the interviews, maybe I'm not performing right, or maybe there's somebody out there that doesn't like me. Whatever those walls are,
Right.
I am, because God works with you on the level of cause.
Right. That's something that reminds me of something that my mother taught me when I was little. I was auditioning, and I had an audition for some TV show, and it was all very exciting, and I really wanted it. And my mom said, "Well, pray about it." And I said, "God doesn't care if I get this." And she was like, "God cares about what you care about."
She's right. Good
G-
mom.
Yeah, good mom.
Good
God
mom.
cares that you care.
Hmm.
And I
Good
didn't
mom.
really know how to pray. And what she prayed for was that I would be confident that
That's
all the.
exactly right.
Mhm.
That's exactly right. That's exactly what we were talking about here.
Yeah, she didn't pray that I would get the gig. She
Hmm.
prayed that I would be confident, that I would feel good,
Hmm.
that I would feel comfortable,
Hmm.
that I would remember the
Hmm.
things that I had practiced
Yes,
and learned.
absolutely. That's
Hmm.
exactly good mothering there, Ben.
Yep.
Good
Yep,
mothering
she
there.
she did a great job. So anyway, Marianne, thank you so much for all of this. I feel like I could just sit here and do this for forever with you. You have so much wonderful insight to share. As soon as I think I've got something clever to say, you just take it to the next level. So you're a wonderful person to exchange ideas with.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And like I said, we need to, you and Sa and I are going to we're going to do a DC trip. I can feel that. Let's do that.
Yeah,
So,
I was showing him a couple things about DC, and showing him some of the ley lines and some of the symbolism in different things and everything, and he's thoroughly intrigued. So we'd love to come do a metaphysical tour with you
we'll do it.
ASAP. Yeah,
Okay,
thank you
Ben.
so much.
Much
You're the
love.
best.
Thank
All
you.
right, much
Bye
love.
bye.
All right.